Special Issues Committee on March the 1st, Counselor Smith.
Here.
Counselor Gear. Here. Counselor Alamon.
Here.
Counselor Sims.
Here.
And Counselor Andrus.
Here.
You got everybody. You got a quorum.
Can I get a motion to dispense with the reading of the minutes and approve them as presented?
Second.
All right. Motion for Mr. Alamon, second for Ms. Andrus. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, that is 5-0. Okay. We're going to start at the top because I believe, I guess I should ask Brian. Brian, is Ron Thompson on Zoom?
Yes.
Brian? Okay, thank you. Okay, 171015, request for consideration of noise and odor problems from Buffalo Rock and Mayfield Barbers, West Homewood area residents. That's funny. We finally took Fred off the agenda about 3 years after. We have Ronald Thompson, our consultant, on Zoom with us tonight. He's actually out of town on another job, but wanted to report to us some information from the county. And then also he and I went and did a plant visit at Buffalo Rock. So he's going to share some of that information with us, kind of where we are and maybe what some of the proposed next steps might be. So Ron, if you are able, go ahead and take it away.
Okay, thank you, Barry. I assume everyone can hear me okay?
Yep, you're good.
Okay. Yes, we made a site visit to Buffalo Rock on February the 12th. During the site visit, we were able to tour the facility and also tour the surrounding area where the wastewater discharge occurs from their plant. During the tour, they provided us an overview of their wastewater treatment process. And also, I think important, they provided some background on recent activities they had done in terms of maintenance and cleaning of their wastewater treatment facility. And on the day we were there, February the 10th, there were no noticeable odors, either inside the treatment facility or around the facility, Buffalo Rock itself. And it appeared that it was running appropriately. All of the units seemed to be functioning, and we were able to take a look at each one of the operational units and then also look at their discharge location. So at that point, the treatment plant does seem to be functioning well. It looks like to me, the maintenance they've done on it has been successful in terms of at least currently being able to provide treatment for the waste being generated there. They did point out a couple of things in terms of the discharge to Jefferson County, that they do have issues during rainfall events or following rainfall events with the levels in the sanitary sewer from Jefferson County backing up that limits their ability to discharge. And that's something that really will have to be addressed outside of Buffalo Rock with the capacity of the collection system. The other point I wanted to make is I have talked with Jefferson County, and the Buffalo Rock personnel also mentioned it during our visit, that they had begun to collect samples of the wastewater being generated there. So Jefferson County has implemented a sampling program. We hope to begin to receive that sample results, and the next step really will be to analyze that sample results and determine how effective the treatment plant is and what the levels of discharge are into the sanitary sewer system. Any questions on the site visit or comments from anybody at this point?
Anybody have any questions? Okay.
Yeah, so the next steps, Barry, is really to do an analysis of the wastewater results that they have, compare those to their permit information. As you're aware, we did request that they provide us some internal sampling data while we were there. I did get a response back from Buffalo Rock indicating they would not be able to provide the internal information, that we could have information that was publicly accessible, but they wouldn't provide us information on the individual unit operation.
Okay. And,
I will go.
Ron, John Harden did have a question for you.
Okay.
Ron,
Go ahead, John.
does ADEM regulate them? Turn on your mic, John. Does ADEM regulate them? Who regulates a private sewer treatment plant like that? I know there's a regulation on the state level for that.
Right. Right. The Buffalo Rock facility has a indirect discharge permit into Jefferson County. So Jefferson County actually, they don't discharge to their processed water to the surface water. They discharge to the sanitary sewer system, and then it receives further treatment by Jefferson County. So Jefferson County really controls the level of their discharge and being sure that there's no constituents that, they are not capable to treat at the Jefferson County facility. And that's really the purpose for the current sampling that Jefferson County's doing, to validate that they're not getting any constituents that would, impact the operation of their plant or be at a level high enough that it would create problems, there at the discharge location.
Okay, thank you.
Ron, do we know when we're going to have the results of the Jefferson County sampling, when they're planning on completing that?
I do not know, Barry. I have communicated with them. I think we'll start getting results fairly soon.
Okay.
What I would recommend, in terms of the wastewater treatment process, the most difficult period for treatment is going to be as we move into spring and as the weather heats up. That will, be a situation where, if we're going to see fluctuations, we'll see them as the weather begins to warm. I do not know yet how long Jefferson County intends to continue their wastewater sampling program. They also anticipate, but have not been able to do anything yet in terms of collecting some air monitoring data. So I think we could potentially, over the next a month or so, see both some wastewater results that we can compare to what would be reasonable levels from that facility, and potentially some air that would help us, again, to evaluate the potential for odor there.
Okay, all right. Mr. Wolverton has a question for you, Ron.
Okay.
Hi, Ron. Do we have any indication on if the county has actually done any of this sampling in the past? My understanding is there's a reason why they built this facility on their property, and it's been there for 5.5, 6 years now, which is about the time that issues started arising. So I was just curious on if that had been an ongoing process or if that's something that's new.
Right. They have done, basically self-reporting sampling from the Buffalo Rock facility as part of their permit that they have. They're required to obtain a permit, before they discharge, and then to monitor, over a monthly and quarterly period, and then to update that permit typically on a 5-year cycle. So there has been, sampling done. I don't know, I haven't seen anything that Jefferson County has done independently during this period.
But Jefferson County will be taking their own samples. They're not going to be, okay.
That's correct. Jefferson County has put in a automated sampling device so they can collect 24-hour composite samples, and they will be analyzing those samples through a independent laboratory. And then as they get the results, we'll be able to QA/QC that to see if there's any indication that there's a parameter that may be outside the sample parameters that they have selected, or that any spikes or deviations in the lab work would indicate there might be a problem.
Is there any chance or any way that we as a body would be able to push for ongoing sampling or monitoring?
We could do that. I think that's the thing we need to do with Jefferson County, especially as we begin to see the results and as we move into warmer months, that we would request that they continue the sampling and If they continue the sampling, then the analytical cost associated with that, they would be covering that analytical cost, and then, really we would just be able to review and critique that rather than paying the cost of having samplers in place. They really, Buffalo Rock is discharging into the Jefferson County system, so, Jefferson County controls that, and they can have access and continue sampling as long as they deem necessary.
Okay.
Ron, I do have one question, because I know Buffalo Rock was not amenable to giving you the sampling data. Do they supply Jefferson County with any of their internal information?
Apparently not, Barry. They do process analysis. I know you noticed when we were there, they had various sample kits set up. They're using that from a operational standpoint to make adjustments in the treatment process. It would be very valuable in analyzing the appropriateness of their design, but they do not, as far as I can find out, provide any of that information to Jefferson County. And then Jefferson County, again, I don't have any official documents from them at this point, but it appears that they've had some limited challenge in gaining access every time they wanted to gain access. The discharge point is located inside the fence, so they have to schedule and manage that. But, apparently Buffalo Rock is being cooperative in letting them in when they need to collect their samples.
Well, it sounds like that might be linked to them getting a renewal of their license to discharge, correct? If it's on a 5-year cycle, roughly?
Yeah, that is correct. I mean, they should, be approaching the point that there would be a draft permit out there, which we would have an opportunity to review that draft permit and make recommendations or, issue any concerns we have. And this sampling data, will be very valuable in, evaluating how effective their internal internal treatment program is. Based on what they've told us, the extensive level of maintenance activities that they've done in terms of their processes and cleaning out tanks, the facility should be operating at its peak efficiency. So to me, one of the keys is to maintain the monitoring, maintain the involvement, and be ensured that, any future maintenance occurs at a reasonable cycle, based on observations and any change in the discharge parameters.
And I think that's why I would push to have continued monitoring, because it seems as though those timelines aren't necessarily followed as desired or as promised in the past. So,
Right. I think it would be worthwhile to, actually, look monthly at the data that's submitted to the under their permit, and then also to go through a cycle of requesting periodic samples from Jefferson County. And then again, I think just anything that could be done to make it as easy as possible for the residents to, submit complaints online. Some process there would be very helpful in being sure that all the appropriate data on complaints is collected.
yeah, we're working on that.
Yeah, well, the good news is we're getting ready to have a presentation about that also, so
Yeah.
that's following you, Ron, so hopefully you spoke that into reality.
So Ron, if you don't mind just stressing to them that this item has been on the council agenda for 5.5+ years now, and seems to coincide with the existence of that sewer treatment plant with the county, just to make sure that they're vitally aware of even peak performance, which I would assume would be a brand new facility, didn't seem to be
Well,
taking care of the
they did do
issues.
a very significant cleaning process, which actually was suggested to them a while, but yeah, 2 years ago. But they finally did it. So hopefully that is gonna make some difference in terms of the efficiency of the plant. All right, well, Ron, does anybody else have any questions? All right, Ron, thank you so much for joining us, and you and I will be in touch to discuss, what we need to do going forward.
Okay, thanks, Barry. And Anybody feel free either to contact me directly or go through Barry if you have questions. I'll be glad to answer any questions that come up.
All right, thanks, Ron, so much. Have a good night. All right, so as usual, we will carry that 15 item over, working on year number 6 of that. Okay, I'm going to skip down to 140221, which is a public hearing set for next Monday night, March 8th at 6 p.m. for consideration of a front yard fence variance at 1600 Shades Glen Circle. Bill Weston, Wyatt Pugh, BZ. I believe Mr. Weston is here. Yes, he is. Come on up. And everybody, or at least members of the committee, Wyatt distributed a packet of information to everybody. When he tried to send this out earlier, several of us, or at least mine, kicked the email back to us, so back to him. So he printed us out hard copies so that we would have those. Mr. Weston, go ahead.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone, for allowing me to come and speak with you today. I've come to seek permission or approval to get a variance for a fence to put in our front yard. And the reason for that, we have a young child, 2 years old, that was born with spina bifida. It's in the letter. And her name is Vivi. We bought a house here in Homewood, and the availability for a place to play, run around, is very limited. The back of the house drops off, and the side portion of the house is a very steep incline, as you can see there. So it's not very safe for someone who's got to wear a AFO to help her walk and stay stable. So the only part, there's a culvert here, and we'll have picket fence that goes along the front of the house, and a chain link fence, black, that will go along the back to protect, keep from going in the culvert, go along the side and the back, to keep anyone from going down the hill for safety. We've also hired a landscaping company who will come in and do a landscaping on this side, put up shrubbery to help protect and beautify the area. And it'll most likely be a white picket fence, 4 feet tall in the front, and the chain link fence will also be 4 feet. It goes around the house.
And can you help me orient myself? Where is y'all's street?
It's 1600 Shades Glen Circle.
Okay,
It's in Forest Brook.
okay,
The little cul-de-sac
okay,
Yeah.
off there.
okay, near your old house?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
If you remember where Rusty lives, almost in the corner.
Yeah,
right there,
yeah,
Where Alan Alford and them live, it's right across the street, that little cul-de-sac right there.
okay, gotcha, okay. And so sorry, I keep turning on and off my microphone.
No, you're fine. The fence will actually start in the corner in the back, and then come toward the front, toward the electric poles, cut across. We'll have a gate for the driveway, and then we'll go a little bit further on the left side to meet the chain link fence.
The opposite side of the house?
Right.
Where the trees are?
Right,
Okay.
where the trees are.
Okay. And explain to me the driveway situation again?
The driveway will have a gate, and it'll be automated.
Activated,
Where it opens and closes as we go out.
so it'll be an actual
Yes.
large vehicle size?
Yeah, it'll be 12 feet wide,
Okay, okay,
4 feet, well,
all
it'll be
right,
the same height as the fence, which would be 4 feet, and then
okay,
12 feet wide.
okay.
wide
But,
enough for a vehicle.
and what material will that be?
It'll be wood.
It'll be wood also?
Mhm.
Okay. Did I see your hand raised, Mr.
I
Overton?
was just gonna say, so the culvert and the drop off are on the left side of the house there?
Yes.
Is that correct? Yeah.
Okay. All right, members of the committee, does anyone have any questions for Mr. Weston?
I had a quick question.
Oh, sorry.
Oops,
Oh, sorry.
go ahead.
This mic is strong today. Have you consulted with your neighbors? I just want to ensure that, and what they think on either side.
Yes, we've consulted with two of the three neighbors. We've got one more to consult with, and the two neighbors we've consulted with have no problems at all.
Okay.
We'd be glad to get letters from them if you need.
Great, thank you.
And I would suggest, like, before you come for the public hearing next week, go ahead and do that, just so if the question comes up, you'll
You can provide.
be able to show that right away. Yeah.
Okay.
Ms. Andrus, do you have a question?
I just wanted to make note that we did receive a email in favor from Vanderbilts, who were in a similar situation a year or so ago that we gave a variance for, and they did write in your favor today, so
Thank you.
make note of that.
I have a question.
Yes, Mr. Jones?
What I was a little bit struggling with is that we typically, for the scenario you're talking about with a special needs child, and is really if you have traffic coming through and you're concerned for, a lot of vehicular traffic,
Right.
and you have a front yard fence to protect that child from the traffic, but you're at the end of the cul-de-sac.
Right.
I mean, you're at the very end of the cul-de-sac, so you're not gonna have any vehicular traffic
We're about
coming
100
through.
yards
So I'm
away
trying to,
from-
I'm struggling with why you need a front yard fence for
Mr.
being at the end of a cul-de-sac.
So, if I can just analyze what I think I heard, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. So if you're not familiar, AFOs are just a plastic brace that the child wears that covers basically from their foot up to just below their knee. So what I thought I heard was that there's very little terrain on their property which their daughter can actually walk on, play in, due to, the grade of
That's correct.
the rest of the yard. So really, the front yard is about all he was describing. And so a lot of those kids have difficulty stopping, slowing down. And so I mean, that was just kind of my sentiment from what
Okay,
you
well, I
said.
understand, I'm just talking about vehicular traffic is not coming through unless it's your car.
We do have people coming in the cul-de-sac and turning around on a regular basis.
It's a short cul-de-sac,
Yes.
and people flip in there to come back out.
Okay, I'm report that I'm struggling with the request a little bit.
Sure.
Anybody else have any questions? You may.
As your child ages, do you see in 5 years won't have a need for that fence? I mean, is there a chance we could say, hey, we're gonna give you a fence in the front yard for a period of time?
I can definitely see that as she gets older and we figure out what her mobility is like.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with taking it down after a certain amount of time, if the mobility is there, if we need to come back. If I don't feel like we have enough time, if she's out of control, and needs a safe area, then I'd like to come back. I'd like to have that opportunity to come back and argue that.
And I think in the past, what we've done is typically if a family, we ask if, for instance, y'all decided y'all were going to move to a different house that had a flatter lot or whatever, that if you made that decision, that the fence would come down as well.
Yes.
But basically, the fence would be there because of your family, and it wouldn't stay past if your family decided to
Right.
go to another house.
We'd be more than happy to take it down before we move.
All right, does anyone else have any questions? I believe the proper motion here is to move it out of committee without a recommendation pending the public hearing on Monday night.
So moved.
All right, motion from
Second.
Ms. Andrus, second from Ms. Gear, sorry, I had a brain glitch. All in, Ms. Gear. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, okay, 5-0, so, public hearing Monday night. We'll hold on to our materials, here, so you won't have to resend those, but if you do, go ahead and talk to your neighbors and get those letters. I think that would probably be a good idea.
Okay.
All right, thank you so much.
All right, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, our next item, 110221. Brian, is Mr. Northrup on Zoom?
Yes.
Okay. All right, 110221 is a request for consideration of a climate change presentation by John Northrup, by myself. Mr. Northrup is a resident of Ward 4 and has been very involved with a more national/global organization that works on climate change issues, and he wanted to give a condensed report, a condensed presentation. I have seen him do this presentation in a longer format, but due to the time constraints that we have tonight, I've asked him to keep it to no more than 15 minutes, including time for questions. So with that, Mr. Northrup, you can take it away.
Thanks, Barry. You guys hear me, I hope?
Yes, we can hear
Okay.
you.
Can I share screen?
Yes, go ahead. You may.
Actually, give me just a second.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, while that's coming up, I want to say, first of all, that due to time and everything else, I'm going to presume that everybody here in the meeting understands the science behind climate change and understands that we do face a problem. And if there is somebody on the council who doesn't, then I'll be glad to spend time with you or them at your convenience. But tonight, I just want to go through what is basically a solution approach that we're recommending and that we hope to find support from the council on. Let me see if I can, there we go. That's good. A little sluggish there. Okay, I represent the Citizens Climate Lobby, which is an international organization with 5 chapters here in Alabama. The Birmingham chapter has been around for about 3 years now. We're nonprofit and nonpartisan and about 99% volunteer. I really want to focus on a solution, but I think to understand the importance of this solution, you need to understand just how urgent and big the problem is. And I'm going to start off real quickly here. This is a graph showing how much carbon that we've pumped into the air since about 1900. And this gets up to about 37 billion tons. That's 37 gigatons every year now. And that in itself is not the important thing. The important thing is what happens to the carbon when it hits the air. This double chart here shows you both CO2 concentrations and temperatures measured over the past 300,000 years. The blue line shows how carbon dioxide in the atmosphere has fluctuated naturally over a great period of time until you get right over here to the last 150 years, and you can see that we've had a massive jump upward in the carbon concentration to 383 parts per million. When over the past 300,000 years, it's never been above 300 parts per million. That's in 2007, but the damage keeps being done. We're up to 414 parts per million now. The red temperature, the red line shows the temperature, which tracks very closely with CO2 concentration. And you can see that there is at least a correlation there. But the science says it's actually causal. And what you don't see here is at the end, temperature has not yet caught up with this little sliver of time here, this last 100 years. But we can expect the temperature to go up more and more, as indeed it has already started since 1880. You can see here land temperature up about 2 degrees Fahrenheit, ocean temperature up about 1 degree Fahrenheit. These are global averages. Sea level up 8 inches, and now it's going up about 3.2 millimeters per year. And of course, this causes all sorts of problems that we're not going to talk about tonight, except I will mention here in the economy, there are economic impacts to the damage that's already underway, but the economy or economics provides a solution that I really want to focus on most heavily. The problem is that we're running short of time to do something before this development gets to be truly catastrophic. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the IPCC, tells us that in this next 9 years, up till about 2030, we have to make very, very significant decreases in our carbon emissions if we're going to hold our global temperature at 1.5 degrees centigrade. Beyond that, we can expect very, very serious climate impacts in a variety of areas. And this, going back to the carbon charge chart, to show you how big a problem this is. It took us 120 years to get to this buildup of carbon to 37 gigatons a year. And now we've got about 29 years left to bring ourselves down to what they call net zero, which means no more carbon into the air than we can take out. Now, the good news is there are plenty of technical solutions to the problem. As a matter of fact, this organization called drawdown.org lists a bunch of them. Here are the top 80 proven technologies right now. And I'm highlighting a few that everybody's heard about. These are some of your all-time favorites, I'm sure, wind and rooftop solar and so forth. And a lot of those technologies individuals can choose to use on their own. And the good news is that those alternative energy costs are coming down. Here's battery costs sinking fast. EV cost, I believe. Yes, have to move a little chart around there. So these costs are coming down, and more of us will be able to make choices that are in the right direction. And just pass through this, just if you will, take a look at some of the great things about electric vehicles, particularly that last item down here. They're expected to last 1 million miles because they're so much simpler than gasoline engines. But as I say, there are many choices that we can make individually in transport, food, energy use, and various purchases. But the problem is that voluntary choices are not going to be enough to solve this problem. Just as we've seen, a lot of people don't seem to believe that masks are important to fight COVID. A lot of people will choose not to make choices that, and in some cases won't be able to make choices that can make all the difference in the world. So what do you do when the time scale is large, or when the scale of the problem is large and the time is short? That's where you go to public policy, and that's where we come to what economists say is the best single approach that we can take to really get a hold on this problem. There was an economist statement made in the Wall Street Journal 2 years ago, last month, or in January rather, signed by 3,500 economists, including a bunch of very noteworthy people. And these economists said that there is, and this is the copy of the statement itself from the Wall Street Journal, what they say there, we won't go through in detail, but I've highlighted the 5 major points. The economists say we need a carbon tax because it's the most effective lever to cut carbon emissions, and it comes right down to economics 101. If you want people to use less of something, make it more expensive. That carbon tax, we call it a fee because in our approach, the tax would actually be a fee because it wouldn't go into building government, which is something that the economists suggest too. The tax should be revenue neutral, and it should rise each year to a certain point when we have carbon emissions under control. This particular approach should allow for letting go of regulations per se, let the invisible hand of the market drive the change. And there should be a carbon border adjustment to protect and reward American businesses. And I'll say a little bit more about that in a minute. And here's the part of the approach that is the most exciting to me, and that is that all of the proceeds from the carbon tax or the carbon fee, depending on what you want to call it, all of the revenue should be returned to households on a unified basis, on a regular, equal basis, monthly payments, and these payments would be called dividends. So what would a bill look like that would include these particular recommendations from the economists? Well, here's the bill that has been introduced in the past 2 sessions of Congress. It hasn't passed. It will be back in this session of Congress. Last time it was called H.R. 763, the Energy Innovation and Carbon Dividend Act. And here's how it would work. Just as, trying to move this thing that keeps popping up on my screen. Just as I said earlier, there would be a charge fee at point source of carbon fuels, whether at the mine, the well, or the import station. The money would be collected on a per tonnage basis. It would be pumped into a trust fund in the U.S. Treasury, and from that Treasury, money would be paid out directly to households. and it would get up to about $3,500 a year at the peak of the program. As I said, the program would start out at a certain level. It'd be $15 a ton of CO2 equivalent emissions, going up for a while until emissions started coming down because demand for carbon fuels decreased. And at that point, be about $3,500 a year. Then it would tail off as carbon use decreased. These are the green areas of those items that I highlighted from the drawdown list of emissions control technologies. If you add to those all of these all these green technologies here would benefit greatly from the incentive that a carbon price would set. So there would be a lot more personal investment and institutional investment in all of these green areas in particular, and that would result in a huge decrease in carbon emissions over a 30-year period up to 2050. So in summation, this approach is going to produce 40% less carbon into the air over a 30-year period, or a 10-year period, 40% in 10 years. Far fewer premature deaths due to a decrease in carbon pollution. The economic fairness of this approach is that these dividends, of course, would be of greater benefit. These are, equal dividends. You don't get more money because you have more income. Everybody gets about the same amount of money. So what it means is that the dividend payments would be a special buffer for the poor and the middle class against the higher carbon costs that would filter out through the economy over time. A real benefit is that our modeling says that there would be something like 2 million new jobs across the country, and these driven by these new investments in new technologies. And these jobs would be grassroots type jobs right here in America. You can't export a solar installer to China. It'd be somebody here in our community. And of course, revenue neutral, meaning that the money comes right into the Treasury and right out back in dividends, not to increase bureaucracy and other government layers. So what about, that's a great plan for us, but what about everyone else in the world? Well, obviously we buy a lot of products from cheap suppliers, especially in China these days. And so if China is not controlling its carbon and its products are cheaper because of that, and we buy those products, are we not defeating the purpose by, are we not solving the problem actually? Well, that's where the border adjustment comes in place.
Hey,
So,
Mr. Northrop, I'm so sorry to interrupt you, but we are working on about 5 minutes left of your 15. So if you could give us, because I know I had a counselor here asking me what locally is the request. What can we do to, at the local level, not at the national level or the international level, but what can we do at the local level?
Okay, if the council, and I'm willing to meet with individual council members to go over this in more detail and in more relaxed pace.
Okay.
But what we're hoping is that the city council will endorse this bill when it comes up in the next Congress. Already the city of Birmingham has endorsed fee and dividend. The city of Florence has already endorsed it, and they're 2 of 107 local governments across the country that have endorsed it. And the Homewood Environmental Commission has endorsed it. So if this isn't the solution for you, then I would suggest strongly that given the deadline that we have to do something fast. I'd be glad to hear some other solution, but this is the one that we think has great nonpartisan potential support across the board, liberal, conservative, Democrat, Republican.
Okay.
So that's the request.
All right. Okay. Does anybody on the council have a question for Mr. Northrop?
Not so much a question, but just to, to clarify, he's just asking for our endorsement of tax, carbon tax legislation,
Okay.
basically.
All right.
Carbon fee and dividend, or carbon tax and dividend. Yeah, it's not just a carbon tax. It's not just a carbon fee, but it's the dividend part of it too that's very important.
And it is interesting, the dividend part is supposed to help consumers offset the cost of, the additional cost of electricity, whatever the carbon producers are, they'll be passing some of their additional costs on to us, the big carbon producers. So that dividend is supposed to help consumers offset their additional market costs. Is that correct, John?
That's correct, and it's really has the best impact, though, on lower income households.
Okay.
Because there is a top end. Just because you make $300,000 a year doesn't mean you're gonna get a bigger dividend.
Okay, all
And
right.
outside of the, I know you mentioned two municipalities in the state outside of, you said a couple hundred. Who notably is supporting something like this, I guess, legislatively?
Okay, Pittsburgh and Philadelphia are comparables. San Francisco has, there's some counties, those are the ones that stick in my mind.
Any particular people in politics, though, over the decades or years?
Yes, one slide I didn't get to show you there is that there is a business group called the Climate Leadership Council, which consists of a bunch of mostly Republican Treasury secretaries and economic advisor people who've come on board with this and said that this is the kind of thing that would really work. But they tend to be economists too, so I guess that's why they see it that way.
All right, anybody else before we let Mr.
Yeah.
Northrop sign off? Yes, Mr. Jones.
I just want to publicly state I would not be in support of what we're talking about here for the carbon tax. I'm against it, so thank you. Not here to debate it, just stating my position.
All right, thank you, Mr. Jones. Anyone else? Mr. Alaman.
Yeah, I would just, and I don't know if he has already, but if we could get the PowerPoint presentation so we could review it on our own
Yeah.
as well.
Yes,
That'd be great.
absolutely. Yeah,
Thank
if
you.
anybody, and like Mr. Northrop said, if anybody has any questions, since we didn't have a lot of time tonight, if anybody has any additional questions for him, I know that he's happy to answer those and to meet with people individually if they want to do that.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Northrop. We appreciate your presentation and for spending time with us tonight, and we will take this under consideration. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much too.
All right. Have a good night.
Good night.
Okay. So I guess I don't know what the proper. I guess we just accept the presentation, or do we even need a motion?
I suppose there was an ask though, wasn't there? I mean, in terms of for us to consider us adopting or whatever, and so if we want to do that, I don't know if we need a motion for that.
Okay.
This would be my suggestion.
Yeah.
Would be that that we simply accept the presentation for tonight. If there is.
Down the road further.
Right.
action.
If there's a desire to move forward with some action item,
Mhm.
then I think we ought to
At
notice
least-
that to the public as an action item. So I would say for tonight,
This is just a
accept this
presentation.
and move on, and
Yeah.
then we can get to, if we need to get to something else, we'll get to something else.
Yeah, because that would be kind of a separate issue.
In my mind,
Yeah,
it would be, yes.
I agree. Okay, so can I get just a motion to accept Mr. Northrop's presentation?
So moved.
All right, motion from Ms. Andrus,
Second.
second from Ms. Nelms. All in favor, I'm sorry, that was Ms. Gear. Apologize. Now I'm like, Walter, I'm mishearing people's voices. All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, all right. That report is accepted. Okay, is Ms. Curtis here about the right-of-way item? Or are you just going to speak to that, Mr. Pugh? Okay, all right, so 160221 is request for permission to work in the city right-of-way at 511 Edgeland Place to add fill dirt and plant a tree from Ms. Dawn Curtis. And Nick, is that something that you can tell us about?
Yes, it is. Thank you. So, Ms. Curtis, I've spoke with her actually this evening. I know that she wasn't able to attend. She apologized. So just before I say anything further, I just asked Brian, could you check to see if she happens to be on Zoom right now? Just to make sure.
I don't see her.
Okay, that's fine. I had sent her the link, but I just want to confirm before I spoke. So a few years ago, Ms. Curtis had asked for permission to remove a tree. There was an older tree that was in the right-of-way in front of her house. It was removed at the time. I think that was back in 2016. Now there's kind of a hole in her yard, and so she's just requesting to put in some fill dirt in the hole and to plant a new tree from Exhibit A in the city's ordinance.
Okay, and that is, so it's in the city right of way at the edge of her yard, where her yard touches the street?
That's correct. It's in
Essentially,
her
okay.
front yard,
Okay.
within the city right away.
Okay, so,
It is not by a sidewalk. It's 511 Edgeland Place. I'm pretty sure that's a valley gutter.
yeah, I don't think there are any sidewalks on that street, I'm pretty sure.
I did have a picture. Would you?
Typically, we authorize them to work in the library with some clarification to the authorization, so we know when they know what they can do down the road. If they do something else, we know how.
Yeah, should we, Nick, should we get with Ms. Curtis and get maybe an image that we can, or what kind of tree she's planning on planting? 'Cause
Even if she just had like the survey of her
Yeah.
property from whenever she bought the house.
She could just highlight.
If she could make a copy of that and then show it, draw on there where she's looking to do, whatever.
And also if we could find out what kind of tree she's planning on planting, because I know that that's been an issue in the past, making sure it's a tree that the roots won't disrupt, anything.
I mean, I can see the tree on Google, so I know what you're talking about.
Okay,
So it shouldn't, my guess is if she's got a copy of her survey, it would be pretty easy to show.
okay.
Sure, that's no problem. So we're just gonna we're gonna request that she provide a sketch of what
Yeah.
she's hoping to do, the placement of the tree, the species of tree
Yeah.
she's hoping to put in that location, and then go from there.
Yeah, and so we can take care of that at our next committee meeting on the 15th?
Correct.
Yeah,
Or
okay.
Will you entertain a motion to approve pending the illustration at council? Nope, okay.
Well,
Nope.
yeah.
I don't think
President
so,
Wise says
because we don't know what it's gonna show, so
Yeah.
everyone needs to have the committee needs to have the opportunity to review
Yeah.
that.
And that's 2 weeks away, so I'm assuming that 2 weeks is not gonna cause a problem in planting the tree.
I will say that, just thinking about that too, so I'm not sure about the timing either, but just to make sure it would then go to council, right? And then
Yeah.
that would be 2 more weeks, because we're meeting
It would be
later.
on the 31st, but I mean, I would imagine right now, huh? Oh, 29th, sorry, yeah, sorry, my math is
So
off.
that's the only thing is just,
Yeah.
I know nothing about her, the pressing timeline that she may or may not be under, but so it would be the 29th though
Yeah.
for approval and reconsideration on March 15th.
Yeah, exactly. Committee 15th and then approval at council on the 29th. Okay. So what I'm going to do without objection is I'm going to carry this over, and Nick, if you'll get with her to get the information, and then if she wants to join us on the 15th by Zoom, she can be here to present that as well. Okay? All right, 150221, request for a report from Jetty Trip on the Citizens Portal. Brian Wallace, I'm not sure how we're gonna do this. You gonna just set the camera and come on out? There he is.
We're gonna do a little reminiscing as well. We haven't had a chance to take a picture,
Oh, that's
so
true.
we're going to. Not tonight. This will hopefully get you
Inspire us.
motivated to do such. But the idea, you get the idea. The idea is basically when citizens come there, they can see everybody. I'd love it if the mayor was in it too.
That's not me, that looks like me, except not 10. Oh, no, it's Brett, that's Brett, my bad.
It's the beard.
Same salt and pepper
Got the beard. Got the rest. All right, so let me, I guess, basically, I'm just going to run through it. That you've got the two
Maybe you got the two scenarios. So this is the first scenario. This is what's available now, ready to go, and we can discuss, or you can ask how we do that. The top one, and I've been working with Berkeley and his staff to create a very easy way to report some of the most common things: animal concerns, road hazards, traffic issues, trees, vegetation issues, garbage, trash, that kind of thing. These are going to be defined. These are not going to be like open comment. So the idea is there's going to be very well-defined things that they can report that helps them with response and everything else that they need to do. If it's not on this list, as it says here, then you can come down to here, which this is the open comment section, and this will be where you can pick your topic. You know, if it's not listed, or it's about the city council, or if somebody wants to compliment somebody. Imagine that. Not sure who to contact about something. I actually talked with Meredith Drennan, and she gets an awful lot of calls over at the chamber of people who they don't know who to contact. And for some reason, they call the chamber. So the hope is they can come to this and say, I don't know who to contact. That'll send it through to me, and then I can divert it on from there, depending on who it is. But the stuff's very basic. This way we can collect some analytics. One of them in particular is if they hit unsure, because that tells us we're not telling people well enough maybe where they live, or they don't care, or something, I don't know. But anyways, this will help with analytics. Joining a focus group, this is something that is going to have a lot of legs to it, but at least in the beginning is something that is going to be very important in getting a lot of things in place and a lot of feedback immediately. This is all going to be online, so we don't have to worry about COVID and all of that stuff. And I just realized I didn't have my mask on, sorry. But anyway, this will give us an opportunity to, if you think of it like this, you know how Pizza Hut, some of the other places, they have large turnover. And so they're always saying we're hiring. And so they'll take they'll have 1 million applications, and they just basically just go through them. Well, this is going to be a lot of the same thing. You know, if we get 1,000 people that sign up for this, we obviously can't have that many focus groups, but it will continue where we can work people through very quickly and very efficiently. So the idea is going to be people can sign up, and then we will pick them. And this in particular, what we ask them and what we do, that will definitely come collectively. What information we want to gather when they become part of the focus group, so that we know who it is we're reaching out to, whether male, female, Hispanic, you name it. So that way we have diversity, and we have the ability to be able to know which ward they're in and some of the other things. But again, that's going to be for y'all to give me and to decide. That won't be anything that I decide. Signing up for newsletters. We've added this. Thank you to Nick, to Carlos, to Jennifer, to everybody who supplied everything, and Andy, to be able to put this up. This is already live now, actually on the council page. It is also, each newsletter that is there is on your personal page already. So depending on which ward you're in, like yours is there, thanks to Nick. So it's already there. Anyway, this is just an addition though that people can come to. And then something that's just going to stay here, what do you think of cityofhomewood.com? This allows us to get constant feedback as I try to make sure that this is something that they like. So this is scenario 2. This is what we would look forward to. Again, new picture. Surveys being a big part of it. Survey 1, survey 2, and this can be, we will probably have a placeholder on here that basically asks all kinds of things about our city. You know, do you like our city? What do you like? What don't you like? So something that's there on a constant basis that we can get constant feedback back from. And then I can add as many of these as I want to. Right now I just put 2. The second one could be you've got an issue coming up. You've got something that you know that the public is going to want to say something about. You can put this out there. Not only can you get a lot of information ahead of time, it will allow you maybe to even focus and narrow some of your thoughts on some of the things that you do. So I think surveys will play an important part. But those are heavy lifts. It's a lot to that. So that's in that scenario 2. This is the same one that's there, and the comments is the same. The focus group is here, but it's not the same. This will be another level when we get to this in the amount that we do, the amount of focus groups. So we'll start with just 1 or 2 pretty basic ones to start getting feedback of things that you may want to get feedback on. But when we hit this second scenario, the idea is it will start interweaving into everything else. It'll interweave into messaging. It'll interweave into other things, and that's where this will grow. And there's no telling how big it will grow. That's going to really be dependent on you guys, but that will have that. The email list, this is something that I think will be very helpful for people. I can let them know when agendas are ready. I can let them know all kinds of stuff. This is also going to go hand in hand with text alerts. Working with Melody, we're hoping to solidify a plan to be able to use the text alert system that is already in place. And to coincide with this, the idea hopefully would be to be able to do both at once. This is one of the ones that I'd really like to do, but this is going to be a really, it's going to take a little time as an FAQ section. And this is as much as we can think of. This would be the kitchen sink. And that would take everybody here, everybody putting it together as to everything that we could think of that would be a frequently asked question about everything from how did they vote? How does a council president get up there? All of the different things. So this would be pretty robust. And then the rest is the same. So that's your two scenarios. This one, like I said, is basically ready to go. Working with Berkeley to solidify and finalize this, and we'll get that done pretty soon. The rest is, as you can see, is pretty straightforward.
But step one is getting a new picture.
Step one is definitely a new picture. And again, I would love to see the mayor in it.
Yeah, do we want to set that for
You
Monday
guys
before
tell
council?
me. You tell me. We can do it right after council. Absolutely.
Is everyone planning
Plan on doing next week.
to be here?
Gotta wear a tie again.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
gotta wear a
sorry.
tie.
You'll have to-
You don't have to.
Carlos.
Yes, step up your game.
Britt didn't wear one, and
I
your
don't even have a coat
your
on.
mayor didn't have one.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
true.
see,
I
and
know,
Alex-
I said we
even your
Alex
council
and Patrick
president
don't
didn't
have
have one.
coats
So you're
on.
okay. You're all right.
Patrick usually has his sunglasses on top of his head.
Yeah.
My hair
Can I
color's
ask a
different.
She would probably rebel against us. Yes, John?
I think Brian mentioned that, some of the stuff's gonna come to you, but I think the worst thing we could have happen with this new situation is people put in there, they got a problem, whatever, and they don't get answered. I mean, all of a sudden, oh, well, I'm not gonna do that again. They didn't answer me last time. So I think we gotta figure out, make sure that there's some backup. You get COVID, something happens, you can't answer the question. I mean, what do we have from a backup standpoint?
So this is going to be a ticket system. So this isn't going to be just my eyes that see it. It will be a handful of eyes that see it, including Berkeley, the mayor, JJ, most likely. Because, as you all know, no matter what comes in, it's probably going to be JJ or Berkeley that eventually decides where it needs to go anyway. So it's a pretty simple
Just put Berkeley's
process
cell
after
phone
that.
number on there.
And as you guys know, JJ and Berkeley both do a fantastic job of answering these. And getting them done, and that's essentially what this is going to do. All of these things are going to be archived. If you want to see them, if you want access to them at any point, I'm going to be archiving them. There'll be a way. If you don't want them, fine. But if you ever want to see what somebody is reporting on a regular basis, or what their certainly comments, I'm sure is something that you all may want to all see. But all you have to do is ask at whatever point, and I'm happy to provide any of that stuff. As far as backups beyond myself, the technology is going to be there to provide that, and then having JJ and Berkeley there.
And Brian, just because Ron was on here earlier talking about the West Homewood issue, would that be, how would we direct that? Like, I mean, because that wouldn't need to go to Berkeley.
We need a repository of those kind of complaints.
So that would be an ad right here. So you would just put odor problem, whatever, specific to whatever it is.
Yeah.
And they can put that in here. Now, understanding that this is more urgent, this is more about urgent things.
Yeah.
This down here is more about that's not urgent. And
Yeah.
so the smell may not be as urgent, and it may.
I don't know, to some of
No,
those
no,
neighbors.
you're right, no. But you guys have to decide that. If not, then it goes down to this, or it can be in both. Or we can have a whole section all by itself for just it.
That might be, I mean, I think, if it's gonna be in the group thing, I think it would need to be in the top section, only because it's just such a persistent issue. I think it needs to be more than just in the comments, just random comments. I think it needs to be a category, because, Ron and I had discussed, when we have it's better for us to be able to say, okay, Adam, okay, Jefferson County, we have 55 people who have complained about odor in the last, 30 days or whatever it is. So to be able to track that other than just all of those texts coming to me and me having to figure out who to call and where to go and who to see. Because I don't want to be the sole owner of odor issues, just because I don't want that. I mean, it's a lot of responsibility for me to have to try to figure out where everybody needs to go and who they need to talk to. So I would like to have some system by which those complaints go somewhere and are kept, like you said, archived, so that we have that if we ever need to, you know, give it to someone.
And it will be. And
Okay.
in each one of you, if any of you come up with something like that and you want it, we can make your own section right there for it. This is gonna be a growing entity, and it can be add, take away, whatever.
That section needs to be time sensitive.
Yes.
Dates, times, places.
Yes.
Description of the odor, those kind of things.
Yeah.
Check your items in that order, and they have to be described in order to get a good, decent response.
And that would be that's the information I would need. You
Yeah.
give me that information and what you need, and then I can build that.
So I would basically need to sit down with you and kind of
Or we could do it through email, whichever, but
Yeah.
it's the turnaround shouldn't be too terribly difficult, and
Okay.
and so it would be on there pretty quickly.
Okay.
I would just ask that it not be called Ward 2 odor problem for branding purposes.
And speaking of, I did name this Speak to Us Homewood, and I had mentioned that I was gonna call it that. Is everybody okay with that? And especially with the picture, it makes sense, Speak to Us Homewood. But is that okay with everybody?
Oh,
or-
yeah, no, that's good.
Okay,
That's
okay.
good. I see Andrew holding his microphone, so I'm assuming that means he needs, yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask if there was a way to, in particular, this item that we're speaking of, if there was a way to ping the ward and the Special Issues Committee Chair
Absolutely.
for an item like that, just so that we get an email registry of, hey, we've been getting reports of this too. Otherwise, it's hard for us to gauge. Right, and for us, it could just be a simple report that, hey, we received another complaint with this item.
Yeah,
Yes, but I can. All I need is an email. And
Okay.
you would get them whenever they respond.
all right, that's a great
And
idea.
my point was basically, I think similar to that. I think for all items, it would be good, I see the report of the problem in the fields. I think we've got, gosh, I'm squinting a lot here. Name, email, notes, what does it say, Brian?
Here, just message.
Message, okay,
Yeah,
so
so it's-
just some additional fields maybe for
Yep.
the address of the person who's submitting it, so we can kind of filter out like what ward they're in. Say we're just getting a bunch of noise complaints from a certain ward, you know, just to be able to filter and sort those. Maybe even something, a line item, the field basically is, if there's a specific geographic issue, maybe the address closest to that issue. I think those maybe will transcend across most items, whether it be odor or noise or speeding, you know. I think that would be an additional field to add that would
Yes.
help us on the back end. Then we have all this data, we can sort it by ward, sort it by issue, and then, you know, kind of evaluate that and think about that as a council going forward when we, you know, consider a different policy and so forth.
Yeah.
So that brings, I guess the next question is, how do you get that information to me? Because I'm gonna wanna know exactly what you just said, and I'm used to taking notes, and I can't right now. So if you have these ideas, you have my email. That's the best way. Just send them to me. So if you already know of some things you wanna add to this, just email it to me, and it'll be added.
Could we maybe also, in terms of a focus group, maybe this would be like a good first focus group for the community, so that they could see this and then they could have we could have public input
Yes,
on this.
Okay,
absolutely.
all right, I see Alex raising his hand.
Okay, so
Politely.
a couple of quick things.
Mhm.
One, what happens if someone that needs to put an item, that doesn't realize they need to put an item on the agenda, sends something like this, you know, says, hey, I got a complaint, I got a tree in the right of way that I want to be redone, and they think that this sort of satisfies it. Is that something JJ will sort of is the idea that JJ will sort of identify that as something that needs to go on an agenda, then come talk to me about it? Or
I don't know, you tell me. Is that something that?
Well, I just think it just seems like a likelihood to me that that's a possibility, that
I
there are
agree.
some things that come in that are not, hey, we need, you know, I've got a, right, they can't be handled administratively. Not, I've got a water leak and I need someone to see it or something like that, but things that actually are gonna take council. And I think we just need to think through that process I'm not suggesting that I have the
Are you
answer.
volunteering?
No.
I do think we would have to have a council liaison. I do
Right.
think, in that case, absolutely, somebody, and you guys could take turns like doing the checks. You guys could take turns every month, and it's somebody's turn, that when those come in where it's pretty clear that something like that has happened, then probably, I don't want to kill her inbox
Sure.
again, but she would probably get pinged with those. But then whoever the liaison is, that may
Yeah,
solve
that
it, I
may
don't know.
be it. I don't think it's anything we have to figure out tonight, but I do think we need to think about that process.
Yes.
The other thing that I will mention is, before we get down the line of focus groups and surveys, I think we have to think about that and how that plays into participation at a meeting, which is a different thing and should be a different thing. And that one can't substitute for the other.
Correct.
I think it is very important that if you believe that an issue is important for whatever reason to you, that you should participate in a meeting. And that is an essential thing that you should do rather than through one of these other things. I want to be fair with the public and not have them see those things as equal. And so before we get down that road, I think we need to think about that a little bit more than we do just the sort of portal of, I've got a problem, let's address it. I'd rather hold off on the other things until we can sort of process that a little bit further and see how that would work so that we are doing the best thing for the citizens.
And an auto response will help with that.
Sure.
Because it will send and say, this does not count as that, and you need to come to a meeting, whatever it needs to say, but that could help.
So, I'm trying to interpret, President Wyatt.
You want me to restate it?
No, I think I've got it. So essentially, right now, the scenario one portal may be absent for now, the focus group portion of that, so that we can wrap our heads around exactly how we want that to go before we sit that out to the world. But we want to go ahead and get out the portion where somebody can respond or report or whatever.
Correct. I'm fine with that. I just think I think the focus group thing is going to take a lot more work to figure out what kind of things we're doing that for, how we determine what those issues are, how we communicate to the public the difference between that and participating in a meeting.
Right.
Why participating in a meeting is more important. All of those things, I think we've got to work our way through those issues before we go live with anything like that.
Yeah, I totally agree.
And Brian, I don't know, what, standing here right this second, let me put you on the spot, what is your timeline thought right now on Citizen Portal?
Immediate, just depending on what you guys want on it, but it's, we've got to finalize some of the things and getting with staff. But if we get the process in place, I mean, certainly, I would say, within the month? Within 4 weeks?
By the end of, well, then let us do this, because we obviously have some things we need to further discuss. Why don't we have you come again, we'll just leave this item on the agenda.
Okay.
So that you can be back here on the 15th, and I would charge everyone between now and then, if you have ideas, suggestions, things that you would like to, give to Brian, go ahead and email him those things, so that when he comes back on the 15th, he might have an amended version, that we can then decide, yes, we're ready to go with this, and get at least some of it out there on the website.
Well, also, especially for John's sake, I will lay out exactly the processes for these so that you will see exactly who is responding to what and what they're doing. You will see the hierarchy.
Okay.
That just, it's not something that we're going to share with the public, but
Right.
you will see that hierarchy and all of that before it ever gets implemented.
Okay.
I would also just suggest this, that before things get added to that list, and I really am going to regret what I'm about to say, that just like when things go on the agenda, they have to go through the president. I
Yes,
think
I
those
agree.
should also go through, that just copy
I was about to say, copy Alex on your
me,
emails.
because I do think I do think we can be counterproductive if we're putting something up there that's about to come up or something like that.
Yeah.
And so I think we just need to make sure that, we're not overloading the system with things that may not need to be there, so,
I think that's a great
as much as
idea.
I would just like to add maybe that,
Yes.
you know, because the whole point and purpose of this is to increase transparency with the public, that we should all do our due diligence to make sure that we're communicating with our constituents and taking suggestions that we could, of course, then
Yeah.
copy to President Wyatt.
Absolutely.
And just encourage the public to email us
Yeah.
with their ideas, and then we could weigh how feasible and achievable they are.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you.
And
All
I
right.
have a quick
Yes.
addition. So, lots of cities do this, and, cities are a lot of cities have a lot of the same issues. I'm just, instead of recreating the wheel, to begin your list, surely you've looked at other portals. and-
Very, very extensively, yes.
And.
There actually aren't a lot of good ones out there. There aren't, actually, nothing like this. This is pretty unique. You'll find it, I'm sure, if you looked hard enough, but I looked, and I didn't see anything like
No.
this. Most of the ones that you see also have passwords for people to get access to information.
Well, I mean, I know Vestavia has one,
No, they
that
don't.
has some basic information, but,
It's not.
just, and talk to department heads, and I would like to see a list of what those categories are. I think, once you get what you think is your firm list, if you could just kind of send it out to us for a review.
Mhm.
But, department heads, and like Carlos said, I mean, I think the citizens, have a good idea of why they call, and all of us have a good idea of why they're calling. And then what do we think about not having a city employee be the, full-time city employee being the point of entry for all of this? I just imagine there would, and I'm not saying I agree with you, JJ, or, Berkeley will be getting a lot of these things, but wouldn't we imagine a city employee, kind of being the funnel?
Well, that would be probably Melody,
Well,
and
I know she can't
she has
do it,
7 billion other
uh,
things to do.
So,
Yeah.
okay.
I mean, if you wanted to come to the city.
Yeah, I would think, why not hire?
Well, it all
somebody
starts
eventually.
with me, and that's a big door and there's reasons for that I will explain, that you'll see why. But the system itself will start pointing where it's supposed to point. And that's gonna just take a little bit of time. As far as anybody that needs to review, that's always gonna be available for anybody. And certainly if we see somebody needs to be added, we can always add them immediately.
And will the follow-up be done through the system as well?
It
and
can be.
captured in the
We have to
system?
discuss that. I'm not sure if that's the best way, and there's a few reasons for that. But yes, there's gonna be some follow-up. That's part of the ticket system. But there are several different ways that we can approach it, and we'll need to discuss how we wanna do that.
Because that'll be the only way the ticket gets closed down, is to somehow putting it back through the system.
That is correct.
Okay.
But I don't know how much the public needs to see of that, and that's part of that.
Okay. All right.
Hey, Brian, one more thing, y'all. I think that, I can wait.
No, go ahead. No,
I mean, less is more. And I think the best way to look at this is to look at our state legislators and our federal legislators on how they've done theirs. They basically have one place you go, and you have just a few things to kind of sort it out. And then what the middleman does is they basically say, oh, this is legislative.
Correct.
This is a council matter. This is a committee matter. This is a Berkeley matter. And just keep it simple to the fact that it goes, just a few places. And then, the council, and we do our job, and we handle it from there. And it's better to look at it that way, because the cities, they're all over the place based on size and municipality, load and all of that stuff. So the best way to look at it is to look at it from a state legislative or federal legislative matter, because theirs are pretty simple, and they just kind of hit the high points, and then they divvy out to the people that it needs to go to.
Okay. Anybody else? So that I can let Miss Jennifer start her meeting 15 minutes late. All right, anybody else? Okay, so we will thank you, Brian. We will have you back on the 15th to further discuss, and like Alex said, if y'all can start sending things to Brian and copy Alex when you do that, that would be great. We will carry that item over, and